Hi, my name is Maggie Hess. I am a second year core member with TFA Arkansas, and I currently teach at Lakeside High School where I have 11th grade English, AP Literature, and AP Language classes. This is my video interview for the Rural School Leadership Academy application for 2017. And before I get started responding to the questions, I wanted to share a fun fact, which is the wall behind me is not actually the same color as my skin, even though it looks like it right now. That's actually just bad lighting that I didn't notice until I started this video. So, with that out of the way, I want to dive right into these questions. The first one asks, why do I want to lead in a school? And this comes from what I've learned about myself through college and through teaching, the different jobs that I've had, is that I am really driven by relationships and human impact. And education is probably the perfect combination of those two things, because when you teach, you very directly have a human impact. And teaching so much encompasses relationships with your students, with other teachers, with other members of the school district, and with people in the community. Um, Something else about it is that with the impact through time and through practice and through intentionality, you improve as a teacher. And when you improve as a teacher, your kids can improve as learners and as people in society. When your kids, when your students improve, school culture can also improve. And it just is this ripple effect through your district and through your community. I've seen that just enough throughout my year and a half of teaching, and through growing up and other experiences to know that being in education and working in a school has a lot of rewards for the types of things that I'm really driven by. Now, that kind of leads into my thoughts on the second question, which is why a rural region? What brings about a passion for that? And something about rural regions for me is I grew up in one, although to be honest, the school that I attended was even 2 times bigger than the high school I teach at now, and neither of them are large by any means. But growing up in that kind of environment, I saw its downsides, namely, which is that there aren't a lot of opportunities for students. And people see that and people think that not a lot of good can come out of these places. Um, but the thing is, when you have a very effective school with very impactful, hardworking people in it, you can change that around, and you can bring those opportunities to your students. I like to think of schools in rural regions like churches in the South, and actually just churches anywhere, based on my experience. Um, Churches anywhere are meant to be a place where people can practice their religion. You go there on Sunday, or perhaps Saturday evening if you're Catholic, and you hear a sermon, you say some prayers, maybe you take communion, maybe you give to offering. That's what it's for. But in truth, it's so much more than that. A church is a place where you can do service projects to help out your community, or you can travel for service projects to help out other communities. My church became a soup kitchen in the fall, so that people who needed a warm meal could have a warm meal. Churches are places where you can meet with people your age and really dive into life's questions and find meaningful answers. They're places where you can practice music, whether you're an instrumentalist in a band or in the choir. Churches become meeting spaces for other organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous or groups that just are looking for a building that's open to housing them. They're so much more than what their strict purpose is supposedly supposed to be. Schools in rural regions are just like that. Kids come to school for an education, and that's what schools are intended for, but they also come to school to socialize. They come to school so they can play a sport. They come to school so they can play an instrument. They come to school so they can eat. They come to school so they can have a warm place to be in a cold day. Schools in the country are needed for so many more things because there aren't enough things in the community sometimes. And you, as a person working in that setting, can leverage that. if you have the place that's already providing so many services, you can find a way to provide even more, or just find the audience for whom you want to provide these things. So working in a rural region, once again, there's this opportunity to have much more of an impact for the people who are there. Now, lastly, the third question is one that I really enjoy, although sometimes I struggle to answer, in thinking about what other people might say about me. And that's because I know pretty well what people would say about me to my face, but I don't know what people would say about me to others' faces. But I do believe that if I had to guess one word coming from these different people who knew me, I would say that, first of all, they would be pretty accurate. I'm a genuine person, and I show all of my sides to all of the people who see me, so there's not a lot of room for misconception. An example, my principal might say that I'm creative. Recently, I was doing a project with my students, and in order to show them an example of how to do an interview, I interviewed the principal with them, and we went through the process of asking questions and taking notes and following up with that person. And I think this was probably the biggest point of contact I've had with my principal, and the most honest time I've had her come into my classroom and see what I'm doing. And I think she would take away from that that I'm creative, because I was using a resource that was right there at the school, and getting a story from someone, which in an English classroom we are dealing so much with stories. So she would probably tell people that I'm creative. We have a janitor who comes into my room every day, and she and I talk every day as long as I'm not leaving early for practice or tutoring or something. And her name is Miss Margaret, which is pretty cool. She and I have the same first name. She would call me friendly, just because she and I have developed a companionship from taking time to get to know each other bit by bit after school every day. Similar to that, a colleague at the school would be Mrs. Sims. She has known me for the past year and a half, also as an English teacher, but she also runs 5 different clubs, and I think she would call me helpful, especially lately when she's been trying to handle some very similar responsibilities that she's had before, but with pulling somebody else in for a kind of accountability, just so that parents and other members of the community feel at ease with what she does. She's relied on me to kind of be her backup, and anytime she asks for something, I try to be there to help her with it. And so I think that in describing me to someone else, she would call me helpful. Lastly, a family member or a parent of a student, it depends, because I have contact with some parents and families more than others. But very generally, if you picked a random one out of the hat, they'd probably say I'm alright, I'm decent. Their kids, if they have any complaints about me, are just that I make them write a lot, or read a lot on their own, but, that's what school is for, and their parents understand that, and I haven't had any fallings out or big disagreements with parents, so they would call me alright. And like I said, these words really reflect the depth of these different relationships and the experiences that I've been accumulating, and I hope to accumulate more. But they're all pretty accurate for me, just because I'm not trying to be anybody I'm not when I'm around, even my principal or the janitor. Those are my responses to the video questions, but before I leave, I want to share one more fun fact, which is that right before I made this video, the stand that I had the computer on completely crumbled in the middle of my rehearsing the answers. So if I'm a little on edge, it's because I'm holding my breath for the stand to stay up, but it has. And so thank you for bearing with me through that, and thank you for this opportunity to apply for the Rural School Leadership Academy.